Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So the market is closing in about a half an hour. I'm recording this video a little bit earlier, but I think more or less, we have a decent idea as to what the price action, I guess, today is going to be. I don't think Tesla will make too much of a difference today. I think if anything, it'll end maybe a little bit lower, but I really think we'll probably end around $247, right? Which will pretty much make us have an update today, a green day of about 2%, give or take, as Tesla closes. So that's not too bad. Pretty decent if I do say so myself. Now obviously it was a lot better. I think we were up at some point up here up about 5% even, I think, at the very peak of it. 6% apparently. Wow, that's like the very peak. And then unfortunately some Twitter news came out how Elon apparently is just actually going to buy Twitter at the $54.20 price, $54.20 per share price. And apparently that's just going to happen as is. He's just going to go through with that, which puts a little bit of potential pressure on the stock, which is why you saw this like massive sell. This is where it happened, of course, right? If you go on like the 3-minute, you can see quite obviously this is where that happened. The news came out and then bam, right? It kind of, it's putting a bit of pressure on the stock, mainly because there's technically a possibility he might have to sell a bit more shares, according to Gary Black on Twitter, for instance, like about $2 billion more worth of shares. So, that potentially puts a bit of a, final potential overhang on the stock, which is why it's sold off. So we'll see what happens. But essentially what I personally see is the fact that it's just playing out what I personally believe is, going to be a bear flag regardless, right? So I'm going to make this video a little bit shorter than usual, mainly because I don't think there's much more to talk about that I haven't already discussed. But ultimately, guys, what I personally see happening at the very moment is just, once again, yet another bear flag. Now, at some point, one of these bear flags will play out to the top side, or the structure will just not simply form a bear flag. It'll form essentially something, the complete opposite of a bear flag. Not opposite, but it will... The structure will essentially, the consolidation will be different, right? Which, if that happens, then that's a good thing. But in this case, what we have at the moment is a potential bear flag setting up. So essentially, to make this, nice and simple, short and sweet, what I see happening is sometime throughout this week, I pretty much see us coming up to potentially the top part of this bear flag one more time for the fourth touch point. It'll be a 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe come up to like 260. I'm not sure as much anymore if we'll come up all the way to 270 anymore, or even like this, 267. Hard to say with this bear flag forming the way it is. So we'll have to see. We'll have to, push above it. But at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised if we come up to around 260, touch the last part of this bear flag up here before most likely making our way down potentially, or consolidating for a bit. So we'll have to see this kind of play out, right? That's kind of the ultimate thing that I personally see happening at the very moment. You can see here the RSI is not looking atrociously bad as well. It's starting to, once again show a bit of bullish divergences. We'll see what that actually transforms into, and if that's actually a good thing or not. On the 1 hour, you can see, the stock pretty much came down to more or less the same lows, but it's much higher. So we'll see maybe this time if it plays out or not. Hard to say for sure, guys. This is a bullish thing here, but this up here is just a bearish pattern. So it's extremely difficult to tell for sure, right? But as of right now, essentially what I see is the best case scenario for the upside, for now at least, is going to be still 272, but that's like best case scenario. That's assuming this bear flag doesn't play out the proper way. We come up to the north side, we at the very least gap fill at 264, if not come up to around 270, right? That's essentially, like, in my opinion, the 270 is the best case scenario for the bull case, and the potential, current main price target will be around 260, followed by the gap fill at 264, and then followed by this kind of 270 range. Those are the three levels I would watch out for. And of course, if you break one of those levels to the upside, so for instance, if we gap fill, we don't really get a massive rejection, or if we at some point reject and then go back up and over, that's considered the level being broken, and we start looking at the next level and the next level and so forth, so on and so forth. That's essentially how that works, right? As of right now, it's extremely difficult to tell for sure how it's going to play out. Like 100%, obviously nothing is 100%, but again, overall, what I do see at the moment is essentially a bear flag being formed. Now the VIX is finally showing some weakness, which is a good sign for the market, which is why the market is essentially doing this October rally I've been talking about for a long time. Just Tesla is, of course, in its own little world here, just doing its own thing, which, it's not really following the market, because, it should be up, that 4% at least at the moment, if not more. Maybe even like 5, almost 6%. But unfortunately, that's not what we have after that Twitter drama came out. So we'll need to let this kind of, do its thing, let it form, let it develop, and see what happens. But ultimately, guys, as I've always said before, I still personally expect a bit more downside to come over, right? I personally think what we might see is a potential come down to around like a 230, maybe even 220s, and then probably we'll get like a nice bounce from there, in my opinion. That should be like an actual longer potential dated bounce, and then we'll go from there, and then maybe we'll still make our way lower or not. We'll see how the structure forms and how the, the stock and everything looks like. But I do expect, if we were to get like an actual major bounce, it'll either happen here and then we'll come up to like that 270 level and then consolidate for a bit before falling further down, or we'll break down out of this bear flag. Tesla will, of course, you know, kind of maybe do its own thing, come over down to this like kind of 230, 220-ish level, bounce off the red line, and then we'll get like an actual, like, you know, good bounce before, you know, of course, assessing that and seeing if that's going to be the bottom finally and we're good, or if we're actually going to make our way down even further to potentially 210, 187, or even as low as 150, which of course is my, you know, worst case scenario price target, which again, not out of the equation, completely possible. I don't think it's the highest probability, but you know, the fact that there is a probability means that you shouldn't ignore it, I guess. People were saying like, oh, Tesla record deliveries, you know, why would that cut, you know, the stock price in half? Well, it's not going to cut it in half, not from here at least, right? And half would have been all the way from this 300 area. That would have been cut in half. From here, it's not. But, you know, that's still a decent drop. Even from here, even in the worst case scenario, if we were to drop from here all the way down here, that's a 40% drop, right? That's still quite significant. So we'll see what happens with that, of course, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason I, you know, believe that might happen, you know, as a potential possibility is not... Too many people put too much emphasis on Tesla. It's like, oh, Tesla this, Tesla that. And don't get me wrong, I love the company. I love what they're doing. I'm ecstatic for the future of Tesla and the company, you know, Elon, whatever, all that stuff. But it's just, there's much more than just Tesla right now. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to remember that we are in like a horrendous macro situation at the moment, like the world crisis. You know, we have like food shortages. We have issues with, you know, of course, global warming in general. We have the war happening. We have the whole oil crisis happening in Europe. We have... I mean, apparently North Korea launched missiles over Japan the other day. We have the potential, you know, China and Taiwan conflict happening potentially. Who knows? Like, God forbid that even happens, right? The point is the fact that there's a lot of very bad things happening that are just not good around the world right now, like many, many different things. And it's not just about like, oh, Tesla this or Tesla that. It's a lot more than just Tesla, at least at the very moment. Again, not financial advice, make your own decisions, make your own research. That's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. We'll see, of course. But, you know, that is kind of what I'm seeing at the moment. So the way I see it, guys, is I personally don't think it's a bad idea to add Tesla in the, you know, the 230, 220, 210, something like that, like, you know, kind of low-ish 200 range. And, you know, if, again, not financial advice, make your own decisions, but, you know, if you believe Tesla will go even lower than that, you can always potentially sell very aggressive calls, and that essentially lowers your average because you're getting paid to own those shares, essentially, right? Which lowers the average of those shares. Just something, you know, that's a slightly more advanced strategy, if you will, but very important to know, in my opinion, if you don't know what it is. But call selling, put selling, all that stuff. Anyway, that's kind of what I see at the moment, guys. I don't want to go too much more. Not really much more to talk about, to be completely honest. But ultimately, at the moment, I'm pretty much eyeballing this potential bear flag to play out, with the next price target being potentially at 260. As soon as maybe even like Thursday or something like that. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday, maybe Friday. But that's kind of what I'm eyeballing at the very moment. So once 260 hits, definitely want to see if we get a rejection. Might even go as high as like this 262-ish area on this, you know, red line, and then get rejected and kind of fall back into the flag as well. That's also a possibility. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Until then, peace.